Hello, this is Dr. Harriet Fraad, bringing you Capitalism Hits Home, a program that tries to develop the intersectionality of personal life, home life, and what's going on in the outer society, the economy, politics, the culture. I want to say thank you before I even begin. Thank you to our Patreon subscribers who help keep this program afloat. And thank you to all our listeners who listen and share this program. And thank you to Democracy at Work, who helps to support this program. Today, I want to talk about a very interesting report, the UN Report on World Happiness. We are the wealthiest country in the world, but sadly, we are not the happiest. Americans are not particularly happy in their home lives, political lives, social lives. That's really one of the reasons that so many are dying and that our life expectancy is going down, whereas other Western industrial countries and the Scandinavian countries are living longer. Well, what is happiness? I took the definition out of the dictionary so we could agree on what I'm talking about. Happiness is a sense of pleasure or contentment. I'll read it off so it makes sense and I get it right. Happiness is a sense of confidence or satisfaction with another person, in an arrangement, in your life situation, a sense of hope and possibility, a sense of satisfaction with the quality of your own life, of being fortunate. Here are the 10 happiest nations in the world. Finland is first, which has been for quite a while. Iceland, Denmark, Switzerland, the Netherlands, Sweden, Germany, Norway, New Zealand, and Austria. Why are they so happy and we're not? Well, I think if there are two things that make a people happier in combination, they're a sense of being supported by their society, a strong safety net, but also freedom to move around, freedom to reinvent oneself, freedom to choose another job, freedom to be mobile and do things without fear, and at the same time get a base level of needed support, which helps people to trust. Americans are some of the least trusting people in the world, whereas these people have a high level of trust in each other, in society, and in their government. So I think we'd have to look at these countries and say, what do we have that they don't? What do they have that we don't have? What are we missing? And I think we'd have to first look at their support systems, because all of these countries have what we don't, in that they have public health care, they have paid vacation, they have control over their own reproduction, they have free abortions if they choose to have an abortion. They have in terms of freedom of reproductive control, they have excellent educational systems for their children, which include birth control education, starting at an early age, where they learn that if the flower isn't pollinated because a bee doesn't take something from the male flower and bring it to the female flower, then the flowers or fruits or whatever they're growing just don't grow. And then they go on to looking at how things are reproduced in nature until middle school, between 4th and 6th grade, where they learn about changes in their own bodies as they achieve puberty. And then after that, in high school, they learn about relationships, sexual relationships, what kind of relationships they want, what do they owe another person, and what do they owe a child who they could create by having sex. And so that they are not learning biological sex. They're learning sex in relationship, and they accept sexuality because it's part of something they've learned since they were little. They try to get people used to their bodies being acceptable. One of the things they do in Norway, which is quite amazing to me, is they have assemblies of students where various speakers are invited and speak naked. So they see old fat people, they see thin people, they see young people. I mean, when I told that to an audience, someone in the audience said, remind me not to speak in Norway. But, there's an acceptance of the body and reproduction and one's physicality, which is a very big part of being acceptable in society. It's one of the things that the trans movement tells us, that they suffer because Americans don't accept their reproductive and romantic choices. Gay people tell us that they feel condemned, and that takes away their sense of joy in life. But these countries have a lot of toleration for the body and teach their people. In the United States, there's only 17 states out of the 50 that teach biologically correct reproductive education. And there's none of them that has a state policy of teaching relationships, romantic relationships and sexuality, or self-acceptance of one's body as part of a sex education curriculum. They also have, in terms of reproduction, full support of maternity and paternity leaves when a child is born, and paid vacations and quality time off, paid leave for personal reasons. So that, for example, the Swedish have 480 days after they have a child that they can divide up between the mother and the father, or whoever the two caretakers are, whether it's the mother and the mother and the father, the two partners who have the child, and allocate it as they wish. And then they both have family leave if they want. And in addition to their maternity and paternity leave, and paid vacations. They all have free health care. And that, of course, includes reproductive care, something Americans don't have at all. That's part of their safety net. Also, none of their commodities, none of the basic needs they have in their lives are commodified to the point where they're just unaffordable. The people of Finland no longer have a homeless crisis because they emphasize affordable housing. And for new mothers who are single, they have big breaks on the rent, and they have generally a policy of affordable housing, affordable healthy food, clean air and ecological standards, because air is another basic necessity, affordable temperature control in terms of heat in the winter and coolness in the summer. And so that people have a sense that they won't fall through the cracks. They don't have to constantly worry that they won't have enough money. They'll be evicted, the lights will be turned off, the heat bill isn't paid, so the heat will be turned off, so that they have an ease of life that we don't have at all. They also have gender equality. A country like Finland, the happiest in the world, they did a study in Finland, and fathers of school-age children spend more time with their children even than mothers do, which is quite impressive because they've emphasized the importance of gender In the preschools, they don't refer to things as his or hers, but to, Jeremy's or Lars's or whoever. They try to stay away from gender connoting pronouns. They also encourage boys to play with dolls, stories about tender emotions for everyone, stories about militancy and anger for everyone, and emphasized gender-neutral toys. For example, in none of these countries do they have guns as something to play with. They don't have that in France either. You go to a child's store, you don't find guns as merchandise in a children's toy store. You find gender-neutral things like trains, like blocks, like, for those countries, dolls and doll equipment, children's cooking equipment for everyone. In a country like Norway, because men tried to get extra credit by not taking their paternity leaves, they tried to get extra credit at work, they have compulsory paternity leaves. So men have to take time off to be with their children. These things make a huge difference. These social supports that Americans don't have, which is why we're not even in the top 15, even though we are the richest country. And so that we really need these things. Americans, in order to be happy, should actually follow a Finnish model that was written up in a book by Partanen, Partanen, who wrote The Nordic Way of Doing Everything, a good book that talked about what the Scandinavian countries do. Now, the Scandinavian countries are all dominantly socialist. Partly their proximity to the Soviet Union used to make them queasy if they weren't, but also they're wealthy countries. A country like Norway has the oil wealth of Saudi Arabia, only instead of reserving it for a top few in a horribly sexist and striated society, they distribute it to everybody, so everyone gets a break. Sweden also has very heavy taxes. Another thing that they do that we don't, to give their people a sense of security, is all of them have outlawed outsourcing. You can't just, because you want to make money elsewhere, take away people's jobs, to take away the community's sense of having something that supports their community, taking away their family's security. The board of directors on all of these countries include people from the neighborhood because they have some input on the ecological impact of what this production unit or factory is producing. They also all have union representation because the workers' lives are affected by whatever the board decides. And legally, outsourcing is illegal. Now, in Sweden, it's not illegal to outsource, but if you outsource production, you have to get an equivalent job for every single person that is employed at an equivalent salary. So usually if they are finding it not profitable, and they might have wanted to outsource, instead they produce something else because it's too costly to find everyone an equivalent job. And that's just too much. But other countries just have laws against it. Germany, which is the most prosperous country in Europe outside of Scandinavia, just Europe, outlaws outsourcing. Also, all of these countries have powerful unions in order to achieve, which is important for home life, personal work balance, home work balance. None of them allow employers to contact employees after work hours, even if they're working remotely. because people, government, and employers need to respect home and work balance. I'm fond of saying this because it blew my mind. Well, they have powerful communist and socialist trade unions that allowed the 300,000 member German Metal Workers Union, because they unionize across the country, to get a 22-hour work week for home life balance, and at the same pay as they would have gotten otherwise. That certainly is a different thing from the United States, where people are afraid of being fired. They're afraid of unemployment. They're afraid of, they get low-waged jobs and they can't survive, and they count on tips. There's no tipping in these countries because it's an unfair practice. They all have not only a minimum wage, but a maximum wage. So corporate executives are not allowed what they are here, at least 350 times what the average worker earns. In their unions, no union official is allowed to make more than their highest paid worker every year, so that they don't have fat cats at the head of their unions who are getting hundreds of thousands of dollars a year while their members are getting minimum wage or close to it. And minimum wage in the United States is $7.25 to, in the enlightened states, $15. They also have heavily subsidized housing. In the United States, two people looking for a 2-bedroom apartment in any state, city, or county in the whole United States can't afford it. They don't have the money for a 2-bedroom apartment if they're getting minimum wage, even if they're two people working full-time. 40% of Americans are on food stamps, and most of them are employed. Their salaries are just so low that they can't possibly live and support the families on those salaries. We have to think, why do they have these things and we don't? We're richer than they. Well, part of the reason is that during the pandemic, we spent over $1 trillion just on armaments. And the United States has more armaments than the next 7 most armed countries in the world combined. And that gives obscene wealth to armaments manufacturers who dictate that policy. In The Intercept, there was an article that said $10,000 invested in defense stocks when the Afghanistan war began now are worth almost $100,000, 10 times. We spent $8 trillion in Afghanistan. We lost, but we spent $8 trillion, which could have given us all good public health care, good child care, after-school care, maternity and paternity leaves, paid vacations, family leave, personal leave. Because all of these happier nations have all of those things. But they do not spend their money in defense. And I think when we're talking about defense, we ought to remember that there has been no war on the United States soil except the Civil War, where we were fighting each other. We're not defending against enemies from the outside. And if we did, we have enough armaments to blow up the world 10 times. So that there is no danger. There's only a danger of some of the biggest companies in the United States getting less subsidy, which would certainly help the rest of us. They also have high taxes. They wouldn't let what we did. 10 billionaires in America got $400 billion boost to their wealth just during the pandemic. They have high taxes. They have some wealthy people, but their taxes are not only high, they're actually enforced. They don't have legal exits to tax shelters in other parts of their own country or in foreign countries. The Panama Papers didn't include revelations about any of their ostensible billionaires, if they have any, investing overseas. They're very strict about that. Now, of course, these are all achievable goals for us. We could start spending the $1 trillion that we spend about a year to help this country, to give us what we need. There would be some stockholders in defense stocks that would be disappointed, and the huge corporations that control them would be disappointed. But should we allow them to control us, to literally take away our happiness? I don't think so. All of these things are possible. If it were possible for them who have less resources, it's certainly possible for us who have more. It's a question of how they're distributed. Also, in order to give their people clean, breathable air as one of their necessities, they have very strong ecological protections. In Switzerland, if you are stopped at a light, you have to turn off your motor because they don't want the pollution in the air. Their people are encouraged to use bicycles, as they are in all of these countries, even the cold ones where it's snowing. They clear it enough so that people can ride bikes, which they do, because they're safe riding bikes. They're not riding in a tiny lane which could be swerved in or parked in by vehicles. They have a lot of protection. So wherever they move, however they move, they're protected. What would it be like if we were protected here? If people weren't threatened by eviction, if they didn't live near polluting plants, either production plants or incinerators, if we had wind and solar protection to give us energy. These are all out there in the world. They're all achievable for us. But I think what we'd have to do is basically get together to make them possible. We would need to have all the disparate organizations in this country be allied together in a socialist union, sort of like an umbrella, with the umbrella pole in the middle being class justice, which means no huge discrepancies between the rich and poor, and guaranteeing that everyone can have a decent life. And then the spokes could be all the causes that Americans are championing now. One could be economic justice, which is why we have 250,000 people on strike at the moment, because they're catching on. We want economic justice. John Deere did great in the pandemic. We haven't gotten a raise. We're on strike. Or the nurses who are on strike, who have been made to work overtime as the hospitals saved money by cutting the nursing staff and increasing patients. They're exhausted as the hospitals saved money on health protections. 4,000 health workers, I think it's 4,000, maybe it's 3,600, but between 3,600 and 4,000 health workers died because the hospitals saved money on protection, and because they were worked till exhaustion in hospitals containing disease. You wouldn't have that. Another spoke, covered with the fabric that it needs, is racial justice. Hundreds of thousands of people have participated in Black Lives Matter because all American lives matter, and the police have not considered that Black lives matter, which is why they've killed so many people who are Black. They could join. The movements, the feminist movements, Me Too, and Time's Up for people who don't have the money to sue, could join. So could climate extinction and all the ecological movements, and the movements for sexual recognition. That would be the overwhelming majority of the American people. And together, of course, we can do it. We need an honest socialist party, something like what Bernie could have offered and would have tried to achieve if he weren't stabbed in the back by the Democratic Party machine. We could do that. It's obvious. If they can do it, we can do it. So please, remember that we needn't suffer like this. We have to get together. We have to stop capitalism and start socialism. And the kind of socialism I think would be best for all of us would be to make all the economic units in our society into co-ops, so people would be equal, so leadership could be shifted, and leaders could be elected from the people working, and people above would be evaluated by the people below them in a hierarchy, as well as the reverse, and where everyone would be empowered to make decisions that affect their lives. And so I hope that we can join, and therefore join the top 10 countries in the next UN Studies of World Happiness. Thank you. Thank you all for listening, for sharing if you share, and also particularly thank you to our Patreon community that helps to sustain us and bring you these podcasts, and to Brian Issam, who produces them, and to Democracy at Work that also makes them possible. Goodbye.